This is what I use for pulling my honey supers. I like it because I'm not lifting any boxes twice. I find these a lifesaver when you're doing just a few boxes. I just give it a scratch like this. Okay, so there's definitely some frames, if anybody wants to look at this, higher moisture than that frame we tested. You're going to have wasps, you're gonna have flies, you're gonna have everything. Hey!
Hi.
Morning, happy Saturday. Typically a social Saturday, I think some of you have been before, is pretty casual, that we're kind of just drinking coffee, chatting about a certain subject. So today we're gonna go a little bit more formal, I guess. We're gonna do some demos. I'm gonna get you guys to come up. We're all gonna get involved. So if you have questions, please, please, please ask them. I love questions. It helps other people know things that they don't even know they didn't know. Maybe there's things that I've missed that you really want to know. So there's a couple ways that we can get our honey supers off. So the very, I wouldn't say easiest way, but the way that needs the very least amount of stuff is going to be basically just with a bee brush, where you're going to go and you're going to take your frames out of the box. I'd like to take this whole box off of the hive, and then I'm going to take my frame and I'm going to just brush all the bees off of it, and I'm going to put it in another box and cover it. Because what happens if you go and you brush all the bees off and you leave it out in the open, the bees will come back and then you'll just cycle through this bee brushing business forever. If you have something like a pro nuke like these, you can, because they are sealed, you can brush your bees off, put them in the pro nukes. They're easy to move that way, especially if you only have, one box or whatever. Okay, so that's going to be the least amount of equipment needed. You pull them out, it takes the most amount of time. Each frame, you're brushing the bees off. Okay. The other option is going to be to use methods to actually drive the bees out of the honey super. So let's talk about is to use this, it's called the Quebec bee escape or triangle bee escape. And so you're going to take your honey supers off the hive. You're going to put this triangle side down on top of your hive. Then you're going to put your honey supers back on top. Okay, you're going to leave it for 24 to 36 hours. And what happens is it's nice flight weather. Your foraging bees that are in the honey supers are going to come down through this hole and out these corners and go collect more nectar. Then when they come back in, they're going to smell the honey through the hole in the middle, but they aren't going to go back up. They'll be obsessed with trying to get up through here, and they won't go back in through here. So the next afternoon, you can go and you can remove your honey supers. It works quite well. If, let's say, you put it on and you're like, oh, I don't have time to go back, they will, in time, if you leave it on too long, figure out that they can go in and out of all those corners, and they will come back up into the honey super. Okay, so that's a triangle escape. And then we have a fume board. This is what I use for pulling my honey supers. I like it because I'm not lifting any boxes twice. So I'm not taking them off and I'm not putting them back on. So this is a metal top and then canvas on the inside. You are going to need one of these, and you're going to need some kind of bee repellent. So we have a Honey Bee Gone. These are more of our natural bee repellents. This one smells like marzipan. It is like an almond-based bee repellent. And then this one is Honey Bandit. It's also a natural, a more natural alternative. And then we have something called Bee-Go, which is very strong scent. Okay, it probably works the best, but it's a little bit, in my opinion, a little bit offensive. So I have, for a few years, used this Honey Bee Gone. And you are going to take the lid off and you just spray, 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 spray to get your canvas wet. Then you're going to put it right on top of your honey supers, and that is going to drive the bees down. So with the fume board, it is best if you have a nice sunny day, because the sun is going to shine on the black metal, and that's going to help kind of fume the bees a little bit better. So you're just taking your lid off, your inner cover, and then that goes right on the top. It's about 10 minutes. Then you're going to pull it off. If you have 2 hives, you will take it off and you will spray, spray, spray. I usually go 1, 2, 3, 4 for a second time. And then I'm going to put it on my second hive, and I'm going to take the box off of the first hive. And then I'm going to do this back and forth until all of my honey supers are off. So I like this because it's one visit. My bees are a little bit of a ways for me to drive. And so it's nice to not have to go and then go back the next day. And I also like to not have to pull the supers off. Sometimes I'll have, I think last year I had 90 supers or something. So to pull all of those off, put all of those back, pull all of those off, I just wasn't feeling like that. It will clear 1 full super. I use deep boxes, and it mostly clears a deep box. It clears a medium box really well. But you will have to do it each medium box. So if you just have the 1 hive, you'll just put it on the 1 hive. You'll take it off, set it aside, take your box off. You're going to want to take your box off and put either an inner cover on that. You're going to want to put a lid on it, something so the bees aren't coming back once they have been asked to leave. Okay, so get it covered up and then do it that way.
What's the difference between using a plastic brush and like a brush that?
So this is a horsehair brush. Some people like these brushes just because they are not synthetic. They're wood. They're more of a natural option. They are very hard to wash. Because like these bristles, when you wash them, will come out. So the longevity of this brush is not as good. I really like, we have some synthetic, like it's a plastic handle with synthetic bristles. I love those brushes because you can just hose them off and they are going to get sticky, and all of these will be clumped together, and then you go to brush your bees off and you're just like, they're like these little hard, and you're smushing them into the frame. So it is good to be able to wash them. So if you have a real preference against plastic, we have that option. But I would also go with a synthetic bristled brush because then you can clean it again and again. It's a little bit easier. So once we've got the bees out of the boxes, we want to make sure we put those boxes somewhere that is bee tight. I have heard a number of times where people are like, oh, I put it out in the shed, or I left the door open, or it was in my garage, and now my garage has 700 bees in it. So you want to make sure that those boxes are somewhere that your bees are not going to be able to get to. Or it'll be kind of a pain because nobody wants 700 bees in their shed, in their garage, or anywhere else. Okay? Honey is going to flow best when it is warm. So if you're pulling your honey supers, like for a lot of years, I would take all my honey supers into my garage and I would crank up the heat to like 30 degrees. So it was nice and hot and the honey was warm and it would flow better. My husband loved that because our garage is under our kids' bedrooms and they did not like that temperature. So I'd be like, more air conditioning. He's like, turn off the heater in the garage. I'm like, not for the honey. So yeah, if you can keep them warm like that, it works better. You don't have to do that. I would do that for a few days when I was spinning them to get the honey out. Here we have like a warming closet. It's like its own little room that we put all the pallets of boxes in, and it's heated to keep the honey flowing better. If you're pulling the honey supers off, it's going to be, the longer you leave them, maybe in a cool garage, the harder it will be in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks. I've had people say, well, I left it for 3 months, and it's going to be a lot harder and sometimes impossible to get that honey out. So it's good to plan to pull the boxes and get them extracted, kind of take a weekend for it or a full day, or depending on what you've got. for volume. I pulled this honey box yesterday. I thought a lot about timing. When are we going to do this that it's going to work timing wise for us? And I thought, oh, July 18th. But it is quite late, the honey flow this year. And our bees pulled a lot of honey in the last 2 weeks. They brought in a lot of honey, but they have not capped a lot of honey. So generally, when I'm pulling honey frames, I want to see them more like everything in here is going to be sticky soon. I want to see them more like this, where they are almost completely capped. Then I want to see like this is less capped, but I just did not have full boxes of capped honey yet in the hives in the back. Okay, a lot of those hives came from nukes, so they did a lot of building. Does anybody know why we don't want to have honey that's uncapped for extracting? Too much moisture. So the bees will dehydrate the honey to a point, and then once it's reached that, they will cap it. You want your honey ideally to be under 19% moisture content. So you can use something like this refractometer, and you can test your moisture levels to make sure that they are low enough. What happens if our honey has too much moisture in it? Let's say we extract uncapped frames and our moisture content is 25%. Does anybody know what's going to happen to that honey? So over time, it will ferment. So you need to have that lower moisture content to make honey last. And we can test our honey even before we... Who wants to come get sticky up here? Somebody want to come hold this? Okay, we can go and you're just going to get some honey on that, like this, okay? And you're going to put it on there. And then we're going to look through and see what kind of moisture content it is. So here we're at about 16%. Okay, does anybody want to take a peek at that? So, on the very right-hand side, maybe 16.5. On the very right-hand side, you're going to see smaller numbers. And it will go like from, what does it start at? 10 and goes all the way up. You'll see a blue line that comes across, and that's going to tell you where your moisture is sitting. Okay? So we can pass that around. Thank you. Okay, so 16%. And that was a mostly uncapped frame. In a more humid environment, you're going to see more chance of higher moisture content in your honey. So I haven't had many years where I've had an issue with my moisture in my honey. If you are not testing it or you're not in a hurry to get your honey off, it is good to let most, like 80% of your frames that you're pulling, be capped. Okay, and then you're pretty good for moisture content. These come with, it's not in here, but they come with a calibration fluid. And you can also use a commercial maple syrup because they are very accurate on their moisture. Yeah, but it does, most of them come with calibration fluid when you buy them, like a little vial. Okay, yeah, you could use olive oil as well. Okay, so now we have our honey boxes. They are mostly capped, or maybe not, like in our case right now. We are going to get all the things that we need ready for uncapping. So if I am just doing a little bit, I love to use this comb capper, okay? We don't have any right now, conveniently. However, I find these a lifesaver when you're doing just a few boxes or a lot of boxes. It sits on your pail, okay? And then your frame sits in here. So I like to put my capping wax into a strainer so that when I am done uncapping, I can take this capping wax and I can rinse it so I can render it later. Okay, so if I just uncap all of my frame into a bucket, you're going to get just this sludge with honey and wax, and it's kind of a mess to clean up later. And so I like to go and put, I like the cone filters. I do that, and then I use a gated bucket so I can let the honey that drains out of my cappings out of the gate once it gets to touching the little bottom of the cone. Okay? And so there are, you may have noticed, many different options for uncapping tools. I usually like to use an uncapping fork. I find it pretty easy. It depends on how straight your frames are. It also depends on how built out your frames are. So some of these frames, like this is a brand new this year frame. And so this wax is going to be very delicate compared to this frame, which is an older frame that they have used a number of times. Okay, you can see that this one is built out almost past the wood. So you're going to be able to more easily use an uncapping knife for this. But when your frame is delicate and not fully built out, you're going to have a hard time cutting it with a knife. Okay, so if we were to do this, okay, so these just kind of, it'll rest in there. Okay, it keeps you from having to try and balance it on the edge of your bucket. Yeah, and if you want to stand up, if you want to come up, we can feel free to do that. Okay, so you stick it in here like this. See how I can get cutting that part that was sticking up, and like this part because it's sticking up, but it gets very hard because the wood is in my way. Okay, so then I would go with something like this. And if you watch YouTube videos, you'll often see people picking it like this. You can totally do this. It takes a ton of time. The bees, when you put this back in the hive, they're going to clean these frames up. They're going to fix them. Okay? I just give it a scratch like this. So you want to make sure that all of the capping is out. Okay, and I also like this because I can just wipe my honey off on there, my cappings. Okay, so we give it a good scrape like that. Yeah, so there are some rollers. I find with a very light, like a thinner honey, it works okay. But with a more thick honey, they get really clogged up. So this one isn't capped on the other side. There's a couple little cells that are capped here. So I just open up those cells. Okay, so then we're totally uncapped on this side, and that side is not capped. So we're just going to open that up. And we're going to stick it in the extractor like that. Yeah, so if it had caps, you would absolutely take both sides off. And so like this one, it's going to be capped on both sides. So we can try something like this knife again. But you can see that it's not really. Yeah. Yeah, so then I can't scrape it off, but okay, so just like that. So that definitely you can see is faster, but there's going to be some need here to take our fork and uncap these sections that the knife didn't get. Okay.
Why does the honey look darker in this?
The honey looks darker because it's a darker frame. It's just on darker, yeah. Okay, so that side is all done.
use your hot knife there, does it, I guess I can use that foot off maybe.
Who wants to do some uncapping? Come on up. I don't want to do all the work. Okay. Okay, so choose your uncapper. Okay, so then you're going to hold your frame.
Okay.
Okay, so you still do have to balance it.
Okay.
Okay, and then you're just going to scrape.
Oh, I'm not very good at this.
It's harder than you think. So, like this one, you're going to want to go, can I show you?
Yeah, of course.
So, I like to go, this one's pretty hard, the cappings.
Okay.
So I go like a couple times over instead of trying to get it the first time. Like when we get the whole frame uncapped, and then you're going to just kind of take the fork and get that extra little bit out. But yeah, I think no matter what, you're going to get wax in the extractor.
So where's, I don't really want to know where your hives are, but what are they collecting from?
These hives are back behind our building here in our teaching apiary. So there's dandelion, like it's just industrial here. There's some clover, there's some thistle, there's, like these are all apple trees, so there's some of that from this spring. Yeah.
Does it have to be like clean?
Well, it has to be, so all of, like here, so if you let it like that, you can see a little bit better. So in here, you want to kind of give it, yeah, there you go. Okay, looks good.
Really?
Yeah. And you're going to see when you spin it if you miss a section. It's going to show.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so does anybody else want to give it a go? Okay. Okay, we'll let James do the other side.
Oh.
And do you want to use this, James, or you want to try the knife?
I'll go with that. That's okay.
Of course.
Thank you.
Oh, did you want to? There's a little bucket here, or there's a sink if you're feeling extra sticky there. So like this is a lot harder comb. So it's darker. They've used this frame a number of times. So you're going to have to definitely put more pressure on it. But when you are using a frame that is new comb like this, so you can see how white that is, it is going to be a lot more delicate. And so you can really damage that comb. But you'll see, you'll go and you'll scrape one like this, and then you'll scrape one like this and take a huge chunk out of it. And then you're just going to let the bees fix it.
We good?
Okay, let's put it in.
Watch it.
And this is how everything gets sticky. Perfect. All right. Anybody else? Yeah, so this here, you don't need to do that because this isn't capped. You just have to take the capping off. Okay, so yeah, you can use things like a heat gun. Some people definitely do that. Some people use a roller as well. Like there's these like uncapping rollers that have little spikes on them. So there are a lot of tools, and really what you have to decide is just what works for you. Okay, who wants to do this side? Some people will use 9 frames. There are even some people that use like electric uncappers or auto uncappers that will use 8 frames because they want that wax to be built out nice and fat out of the frame, and then you cut like a really clean cut. So using fewer frames in your honey box is going to allow you to use the knife because it will be built out past the wood. Yeah, and so none of these frames are kind of built out like that. These are kind of the first go of the honey flow. So they are a little bit lighter than I would have liked. So generally when you're spinning it, you're going to see the honey coming out, hitting the side of the extractor. That was very fast, but even spinning it like this quick, you're going to see honey coming out if there's still honey in there yet. So if anybody wants to see, you can look down and you'll see it hitting the side of.
You don't have to turn.
You have to flip them, okay? So when you look at this, it's empty. That's pretty clean. Okay, so even this, if you want to see now, you can see the honey. So do you see the honey coming out there? Okay, and it's the second side with less honey is going to spin better because now it's leveling out, right? The honey's coming out. There was one frame with no honey on the second side. And so then you get some frames that just aren't balanced.
Your dryer is
Yeah.
machine at the
It's like your washing machine, yeah. Okay, and you're just going to pull out your frame and check that comb. So like, does it look like all the honey's out of it? Looks pretty clean.
Yep.
Okay. So then you would take those frames out and you do it again. Those frames will go back in the box. And then look at all the honey. And so those weren't frames that were really built out. And so you're going to have to do more than one round to get that honey really flowing, right? If I had 8, 10, 12, 20 frames, you're going to see that a lot more comes out. Yeah, so once these frames come out, they're considered wet frames because they're sticky. They still have honey on them. You can put them back on the hive to let the bees clean them up. I would recommend pulling your honey before the nectar flow stops. Depends where you live. It depends on how dry it is. So if we have a really droughty summer, we're going to see nectar drying up sooner. But when there's an abundance of nectar, the bees are far more happy with you taking their supers than when there's nothing left for them to forage. So if they're out foraging, they're busy, they're flying, they're bringing back, and you're just kind of doing your thing and they're ignoring you a little bit. If they are not finding anything in nature, as soon as you try and get them off a honey frame, they're just right back on it. So I like kind of mid-August at the latest to get like the main boxes off my hives. I will often put another box on until, the first week of September. And sometimes, some years they fill it up and other years they partially fill it. It keeps them from backfilling the brood nest. And then I'm only fighting with one box per hive instead of maybe 3 or 4 boxes per hive to get the honey off. Yeah, I put another super on when I pull them off. Like I'll pull them off and put an empty super for them. There's not going to be any more bees in there than if there was only 2 supers, right? Like it's the same amount of bees. Yeah. Okay, enough is enough here. So we tested the nectar out of one of the frames in there, but we had other frames that were also uncapped. Let's test it again when all the frames have come together. Okay, so there's definitely some frames, if anybody wants to look at this, that were less than or like higher moisture than that frame we tested.
Is it still in the parameters you want?
17, just under 17, yeah.
So 19 is the top.
I like it to be under 18, but yeah, you can go a little higher than that. Did anybody want to see the difference there? Or anybody who didn't see it the first time that went around? Once it's extracted, we would usually, if we have honey that is too moist, had too much moisture, we would mix it with honey that was a low moisture. So maybe like an end of the season honey that was lower is going to be your best bet. So I would say out of these 4 frames, we were at most half capped, probably less than that, probably 40% capped. And we're still only at like 17%. So if you were going and you were pulling frames that were all capped, there's a very low chance that you're over your 18%. Yeah. Okay, so this is a really slow process. It is almost drained through there. So you can see it going there. This strainer has a more coarse filter on top, this one here. And then that drains out all your chunks, and then a finer filter underneath. Okay? So you can strain your honey like this, straight out of your extractor, You can also go straight out of your extractor into like a settling tank. A lot of people will use a heated settling tank. You can use these buckets with gates and you can let it settle. So you'll put it in there, you'll let it sit overnight, the wax will come to the top and the honey will go underneath, and then you're going to open up that gate and run it through a strainer into another pail. It goes way, way faster than letting it sit, if you have a lot to do, through those strainers, is giving it a bit of a settle. Yeah, so if you've already strained it and you don't have like big chunks, that is, or if you have foam or anything like that, that's a great way to get that layer off the top. So, okay, so that is that. If you had one box, you would do that 1.5 more times. If you had, let's say, 10 frames, and this is an 8-frame extractor, you would just want to make sure those last 2 frames that you are across from each other, trying to balance it a little. I will often leave 2 of the extracted frames in, and then I'll put 2 that are unextracted, just to give those other sides a little bit more weight. Okay? And then the best part is cleaning it up afterwards. So who wants to volunteer?
I've got it going.
Coffee's out, guys. It feels like you should use hot water, but you should definitely not use hot water when there's still wax in the extractor. So I take my extractor out to the backyard and I hose it out with like a spray nozzle on my hose with cold water or a pressure washer, but you want to get the wax out off of the whole everything, and then you can wash it with warm water. But if you wash it with hot water, that wax will melt and it'll just make like a film on your extractor. So rinse the wax out with cold water, the colder the better, and then you can give it like you can use a disinfectant. I like just using Dawn dish soap, give it a wash, give it another rinse after. So your wet supers, like these frames are empty of honey, but they are still wet, right? So you can see they kind of glisten still a little bit. If you have, say, 2 hives and you took 2 boxes off each, I would put those boxes back on and let them clean those out. It's going to store better because then your frames will be dry, they'll be less sticky, your boxes won't be all stuck together. If you have a ton of boxes, it gets to be a bit of a pain letting them clean them. Well, if there's nectar, I'd put them back on and give them space. But if there's no nectar, they'll just clean them out and leave them empty. Yeah. But obviously you want them off before we're getting really cold nights or you're winterizing. You only need a few days to let them clean it up. And then if you can take them off again. Yeah, if you're sitting them out, like tipping them and letting them clean them out that way, you're going to have wasps, you're going to have flies, you're going to have everything. Ants, yeah. If you're putting them back on the hive, it's the best way to not encourage any of those things.